The Cowboy Yarn Crawl stretches across the entire state of Wyoming, and with 6 stores and a fiber mill, there's so much to love. This crawl goes all summer long from May 25th through Labor Day. Whether you're heading out to Yellowstone or driving across the state on I-80, you're sure to cross paths with one of these amazing stores. When it comes to yarn crawls, you know we don't do things halfway. We went to all 7 stops, and we're taking you along with us. We're starting out in the northern part of the state at the Fiber House in Sheridan. The Fiber House has been around for 20 years with Donna and husband Chris at the head for the last 15 years. This house was built in 1907 and was a residential home through the 70s. Since then, it's been several different businesses before becoming the Fiber House in 2004. Here we spotted our first sighting of Wicked Tint yarns out of Wright, Wyoming. I had to grab a skein for my blanket. During the crawl, look out for Moonflower the monkey. They move it every single day, and if you're the one to find it, you'll get 5% off your purchase. We had the best time getting to know Donna and Chris. If you're coming through Sheridan, make sure to stop in and say hey. That same day, we drove to one of Wyoming's newer shops, Swanky Mountain in Gillette. Selene, the store owner, is super fun and laid back. Her husband was also there working on a weaving commission. They carry loads of locally made items like Blackbird sycamore yarn from Cheyenne and Wicked Tint yarns that we saw earlier today. They also have Rustic and Wild lotion and Sunshine and Stitches markers. If you find yourself at Swanky Mountain, you must meet Luna, the dog. She was super sweet and so well trained. Selene loves to do trunk shows. While we were visiting, they had Red Stag out of Texas, but typically they bring in trunk shows about every 6 weeks. The next day, we headed to Buffalo, Wyoming, which falls between our first 2 shops because we had a tour to film. Now you'll get to see the full store, mill, and interview with owner Karen in just a few weeks, so consider this a sneak peek. Mountain Meadow mills all of their own yarn right here in Buffalo. We've also seen their yarn in many of the stores across Wyoming and Montana too. They specialize in non-superwash yarns and use mostly Wyoming and Montana raised sheep for their blends. Chances are, if you've worked with an indie dyed yarn made in Wyoming, it's probably theirs. There's something for everyone in the store with gorgeous yarns and machine knit garments that are made and finished right in the mill. You can also take a self-guided tour that gives you a bird's eye view of the yarn being made. Now don't worry, you'll get your very own Nitty Natty virtual tour very, very soon. We then headed back west to Wyoming Yarn and Fiber in Cody. Now, if you've heard of Cody, it's probably for their famous rodeos where high-level cowboys compete. Kent and I are already planning to head back at some point to go to the 4th of July rodeo weekend and to visit Carista at Wyoming Yarn and Fiber again. So Carista started her business with hand dyeing in 2019, but she saw a need for a shop in the area and opened her own store in 2022. Carista and I immediately connected because she was one of my first test knitters way back in 2018. We may have spent a long time hanging out here and chatting and filmed far too much to fit into one segment of a video, so here are some highlights. The shop covers all sorts of crafts from macrame to punch needle to rug hooking because they're the only craft shop in town besides Walmart and a quilt store. Carista has extended her dyeing skills to cinch cords for horses, so if you're someone who shows horses, you can deck your horse out with the fanciest gear. Her hand-dyed yarn business, Swanky Mountain Crafts, is now run in the back of the shop. Carista loves to dye fun colors whenever inspiration strikes. She has a monthly sock yarn subscription and a super cute camping kit that just came out. And she also designs patterns. Her husband Bradley is crafty as well and makes all the neat wooden items and stickers around the shop. And finally, there are tons of other amazing local yarn options to choose from in the store. After several days in Yellowstone and Grand Teton, we continued our yarn crawl in Jackson, Wyoming at Knit on Pearl. This shop is super cute and in such a sweet neighborhood with houses going down one block and small businesses down the other. Though we didn't get to meet the owner, Margaret, we did meet Carolyn, who was so fun and such a great help. Knit on Pearl carries tons of Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho yarns. But I was especially drawn to the Teton Yarn Company out of Idaho. They have so many colorways inspired by the Grand Tetons where we had just been, like Jenny Lake, Lupine Meadows, Wyoming Sunset, and Hidden Falls, which we actually hiked to. You'll also find polka dot sheep, mountain colors, and farmer's daughter fibers out of Montana. Now you know I'm a sucker for a shop colorway, and Blue Savannah out of Idaho created this exclusive colorway called Josie's, which is named after a hike on Josie's Ridge Trail just outside of town. These last two shops will take us to southern Wyoming, just off of Interstate 80. Rock Springs is the perfect place to stop for a yarn break. We had the pleasure of visiting the Yarn and the Tail not only once, but twice. Our first visit was before the yarn crawl on our way to Utah, but you know we had to stop back by on our way back east to get our stamp and to see Heidi again. Heidi creates an environment that can be your home away from home. She actually said that we were required to bring Toaster in with us on our second visit. The store has such a great selection of hand-dyed yarns and commercially dyed yarns. I was really impressed with Heidi's depth of stock. You'll be able to get all the yarn you need for a sweater here. Check out their new colorway for 2024 from Blackbird Sycamore Yarns. It's called Sky Dance and it's inspired by the Aurora Borealis. And of course, I picked up a skein for my blanket. Heidi loves to collect vintage items and found this incredible floor swift. So now I want one, but for the future, of course. Both times we visited, we just had the best and most relaxing time. I just can't say enough good things about the welcoming environment that Heidi has created. We saved our first yarn store for last because Cowgirl Yarn is the very first stop we made during my very first day in Wyoming. Cowgirl Yarn is in Laramie, Wyoming, also off of I-80. Laramie is just the cutest town. On the same street as the shop, there's a coffee shop, a gift shop, a kids shop, and a bookshop. So really, you could spend the entire day in town. Lori has an absolutely beautiful store with anything a yarn lover could need. She has tons of locally made and dyed Wyoming yarns, including Mountain Meadow wool. I had the best time looking through her collection of Blackbird Sycamore colorways, but ultimately landed on the colorway dyed for the University of Wyoming. Go Cowboys! I believe you can only find this at Cowgirl Yarn. It was so fun to start and end our Wyoming journey at Cowgirl Yarn. We spent the first time here at the end of April and then closed out the yarn crawl here in early June. If we hadn't come back, we wouldn't have seen the beautiful backyard patio, which is now open for knitting and crochet since the weather has warmed up. We also got to peek into Lori's amazing basement space where they teach some of their classes like weaving and even baking. When we finished up the crawl and got all the stamps on our card, we were able to turn it in for the grand prize. But there are prizes at each shop along the way too. This crawl goes on all summer long, so you have plenty of time to join in and get to as many shops as you can. Something that stood out to me during this yarn crawl is the camaraderie of all of the shop owners. Wyoming, you are so lucky to have this many incredible shops across the state that all work together. And yes, we went to every single store on the crawl, which includes every single yarn store in Wyoming. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.